Since Doctor Who's 2005 revival, we've been treated to 10 series of new adventures. To me, a good series must comprise stories with a good blend of individuality and elements that also contribute to an overall story arc. The story arc must be compelling and progress from week to week, not just be a tacked on phrase or sequence that appears every now and again. It's also necessary to have a likeable Doctor and companion lineup. Any relationships between recurring characters should also develop throughout the series. But most of all, a great Doctor Who series should have a strong start, a thrilling middle, and a very satisfying ending. So, without further ado, how would I rank all the series of New Who so far? Omitting the Christmas specials, 2009 specials, and the Day of the Doctor for consistency, here's my ranking. In 10th and last place, I've put Series 7. For me, this one just doesn't work. Perhaps if Part 1 and 2 had both been given 13 episodes each to spread their wings, a full series, they might have stood a chance at being successful. Each half certainly had potential, but was ultimately just a setup of no more than a handful of episodes, leading to a conclusion that was highly anticipated. Take the departure of the Ponds in Part 1 and the 50th anniversary in Part 2. However, the resolutions didn't quite deliver. They were a bit of an anticlimax on both occasions. Now, I'm not blaming him because I think he gets far too much slack already as it is. But I think Moffat really overdid things behind the scenes with the 50th, Series 7 and Sherlock all going on at once, as he's actually admitted himself, and unfortunately I think Series 7 suffered as a consequence. There just wasn't enough time or thought devoted to each individual episode, or the overall story arc for that matter, to make either of them work, and the series just falls flat on its face because of that. At number 9 is Series 2, another one that I'm not really a massive fan of, but at least this one actually has a coherent story arc and consistent style. My biggest problem with this series, if I'm being honest, is the Doctor-companion pairing of the 10th Doctor and Rose. Unfortunately, Tennant's Doctor is at his most irritating in this series, and I find Rose just as unbearable, if not more. Furthermore, outside of the arc surrounding Torchwood, the Cybermen and parallel universes, there aren't many memorable stories, to my mind anyway, bar School Reunion perhaps, and The Girl in the Fireplace, and the Ood two-parter, and the less said about Fear Her, the better. Despite all this though, I do admire the structure of Series 2 at least, with the Cyberman two-parter practically a precursor to the mid-season finales that we'd become accustomed to in the split series for Series 6 and Series 7. It moves the story arc forwards by introducing a new location and new characters that will ultimately reappear in the series finale. Using the same monsters and recurring cast for two-parters, i.e. a third of the whole series, is admittedly a risky move, but is here used to the advantage of the ongoing narrative to build towards a satisfying finale. In 8th position is Series 3. Now, much like Series 2, for me, Series 3 has a good arc and is stylistically consistent, but just doesn't have many memorable episodes. Admittedly, I really do like the repeated meme of Vote Saxon and the sense of mystery it creates surrounding the man himself, who turns out to be the Master, of course. Moreover, the series finale is nothing less than epic. Spreading it across 3 parts is a genius move in terms of storytelling, giving us a cliffhanger into episode 12, as well as one at the end of it leading into episode 13. Blink and the Family of Blood two-parter I also adore. However, there's just not really much going on for the first 7 episodes in the series, with the Lazarus Experiment and 42 standing out as 2 real duds. They have potential to be great, but are really just poorly executed, I think. I must say as well, I find Martha a terribly annoying companion, and can't always take Freema Agyeman's acting seriously, I'm afraid. That said, I think she does get better as the series progresses, in many ways just like the series itself. At number 7 is Series 6. Now, I think this one gets far too much slack from fans. To be fair, there are actually some decent episodes, especially in the first half, I even like The Curse of the Black Spot, or at least don't mind it, and think the Ganger two-parter is criminally underrated. It's a really, really great story. Clearly, with Sherlock simultaneously being made by Moffat around this time, I think this is when it starts to get a little bit too much for him. That's why the series was split, essentially, to give him more time to work on Sherlock and other things. But unfortunately, splitting the series led to a shambles of an end-of-series finale and conclusion in the form of The Wedding of River Song. It just didn't quite deliver and quite wrap up things in the way that it should have done. Despite this, however, I do have fond memories of watching this series when it was initially broadcast, and getting really excited for the mid-season finale, mid-season opener, and the series finale itself, even though you couldn't help but feel that things never really got going properly because each half of the series, each run of episodes was so short. It's by no means a bad series as such, but at the same time could have been so much more. In 6th place is Series 1. I find this one a bit overrated, I will admit, but I'll also happily admit that it is one of RTD's best series, absolutely. Like with Series 2, I do love how there's a sense of an overarching narrative throughout the series, how each episode contributes to what culminates into the finale. You have the first trip to the future, the first trip to the past, Earth's first alien encounter, the reappearance of the Daleks, the introduction of Satellite 5, Rose's dad, all these elements that gain extra relevance when it comes to the series finale. Perhaps it was because it was known that Eccleston was leaving, and also that the series should offer a self-contained story in case it wasn't recommissioned. But you do get the feeling that more thought went into what Series 1 should be than any series since. But then again, I suppose they just have 16 years in the making, the whole of the Wilderness years. It's not a perfect series in my opinion. At times it's far too comedic, and I still don't like Rose, even though she's much more tolerable here. But nevertheless, a very strong series. At number 5 is Series 8. Capaldi's first series is a little bit rough around the edges. I agree ever so slightly that the writers were still working out kind of what direction to take the new Doctor in, up until about halfway through this series at least. However, I can't help but love it. There's a darker Doctor and a much more textured, more interesting dynamic between the Doctor and the companion. The unpredictability of the 12th Doctor's personality makes the whole tone of the series that little bit more dangerous and scary, with the strange Heaven cameo sequences contributing a looming sense of death and destruction. I also love the Doctor, Clara, Danny triangle, and how the relationships between those characters alter throughout the series, although really from the start it's clear that things are never quite going to end well. Even though it doesn't feel new as such, I think Series 8 was groundbreaking for Doctor Who in many ways, and it's one that I'll always remember fondly for personal reasons. At number 4, I've gone for Series 9. I really must admit, I don't get why people, and especially fans, don't like this one. I think it has a lot going for it. For starters, whilst the increased amount of two-part stories does mean there are slightly less individual narratives within the series, on the plus side it gives it the feeling of one larger, more epic story that's been serialised into many parts. There's also an increase in cliffhangers, which used to be a routine in classic Doctor Who anyway. I know a lot of people detest the hybrid story arc and its resolution in Hellbent, but I personally think it's executed brilliantly. The whole series is about two friends, the Doctor and Clara, and the extent that they'll go to in order to save the universe and to save each other. Although Clara isn't a new companion, her dynamic with Doctor is perhaps examined more in Series 9 than any other companion has received in a previous series. The Doctor himself is also put under the spotlight much more than he has been previously. Obviously, he goes too far and essentially becomes the hybrid, or at least part of it, in Hellbent, but also does similar things that test and challenge his moral code and morality in other episodes, such as saving Ashildr in The Girl Who Died. I'll be the first to say that Series 9 isn't perfect in all aspects. It is still very much same old, as the Doctor famously says in one of the early trailers. but it is a very thought-provoking and interesting series nevertheless. At number 3 is Series 4, undoubtedly RTD's best series. It really encapsulates and celebrates everything that made the 2005 revival such a success. You've got reappearing companions and past characters and monsters all coming back, plus some of the biggest, boldest stories told in the show to date. Although the reappearance of Donna Noble is arguably one of the most unexpected moves that RTD could make, in hindsight it is one of the best decisions made in the history of revived Doctor Who. Tate and Tennant bounce off each other so brilliantly. Gone are the days of young, love-struck companions in favour of a character that is more down to earth and flawed, but also just genuinely hilarious. I suppose my only real criticism of this series is that there are some slightly weaker stories. Take Planet of the Ood or The Doctor's Daughter for instance, and of course Rose Tyler is back, she just couldn't resist it. But for the most part, however, Series 4 is just a really enjoyable run with some truly thrilling moments. In second place is Series 10, to me the freshest that Doctor Who has felt since 2010. We have the first new companion in 5 years, Matt Lucas adding the comedy that we never knew the show needed before, and Peter Capaldi in his absolute element as the 12th Doctor for the final time. Whilst the stories being told aren't necessarily ambitious or groundbreaking as such, they are nevertheless quintessentially Doctor Who. Although there are a couple of dud moments across the series, to me no single episode quite stands out from the rest. I think stylistically Series 10 is very consistent, and like the best series, it has an innovative, multi-layered story arc that develops from one thing in the very first episode to something quite different by about halfway through. It's great to see Missy as often as we saw Delgado in the Pertwee era, popping up almost every episode in the latter half of the series to foreground events that will take place in the finale. At the time Series 10 was broadcast, I never really thought much of it, or at least I didn't see it as particularly special compared to the rest. However, in hindsight, it deserves no spot lower than the top 3 in such a list. It's Doctor Who just done really, really well, and you can't argue with that. And at number 1, my favourite series of New Who is of course Series 5. If I had to describe this series in just one word, I would choose fresh. It is so fresh and feels so new, which for a show that thrives on change can only be a good thing. Matt Smith's animated portrayal of the Doctor is fantastic from start to finish, the perfect mix of alien and childlike enthusiasm. And although I fundamentally dislike Amy Pond as a character, there's no doubting that she and the 11th Doctor, as well as Rory eventually, formed one of the most memorable TARDIS teams the show has ever been blessed with. There's a great mix of stories, with locations ranging from the Roman era to the 33rd century. There's also the return of many old foes, such as the Daleks, Silurians and Weeping Angels, all of which are in some way reinvented to suit the tone of this new era. The whole series is like one big fairy tale, so far removed from the very contemporary stories of the previous few series that at times it does feel strange, but also overwhelmingly warm and magical. And the story arc is just one of the best, providing the series with an appropriate sense of closure by episode 13. To me, Series 5 is the closest that New Who has come to the perfect series. Although no series is perfect or flawless, this one comes pretty close. So there we have it, my ranking of all the series of New Who so far. What's your favourite series or least favourite series? Or do you love one that I hate or vice versa? Whatever your opinion is, put it down in the comments below and I'll be sure to take a look. Thank you very much for watching this video, I do hope you enjoyed it. Please subscribe if you did and like the video, and I'll see you very soon for some more new content. Goodbye for now guys.